Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hygge With It. Today we're doing my January haul revisit. So in this video we are going back a whole year to January 2018, looking at what I bought in that month and what I read. This really keeps me accountable. And then I'm going to choose one book from that list to read this January. So let's get into it. I have to say, I think this is one of my favorite videos to do every month because I've been doing it. Like, I have been reading the book that I choose. And I've been reading it usually at the beginning of the month, and I think that's the secret, that I'm kind of promising myself to do it, and so I do it right away at the beginning of the month. And then I feel like I'm tackling my TBR, like my owned books on my shelves, which feels amazing. So, okay. We have several hauls to go through for January. I picked up 38 books in January of 2018. I have read 9 of those books and I donated 3 of them. So I think that means I have 26 left on my TBR. So, okay, I could be wrong because I didn't write it down. I didn't use a calculator. I was not in any way very efficient or effective in math, but I think it's 26. So first up is my haul where I go through the bookish gifts that I got for Christmas of last year. So last year I received Lily and the Octopus, which was my favorite book of 2017 that I had read, and I really wanted my own copy. So Barry kindly got this for me, actually for our anniversary, which is December 12th. And that was lovely. I'm so happy that I have that on my shelves. He also got me a signed copy of I Feel Bad About My Neck by Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron is one of my idols. I love her. She passed away many years ago now. And I never thought that I would have anything signed by her. And then Barry gave a book to me, I Feel Bad About My Neck. And I was so excited and blown away. Of course, I'd already read it, but having a signed copy, it's like my prized possession. I also received Hidden Sea from my dad. Now, Hidden Sea is like a retelling of The Nutcracker by Gregory Maguire. He often takes books that are based on fairy tales and kind of plays with that storyline. My sister gave me Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier, which I have not read. I do love Daphne du Maurier. I've read 2 of her books this year. First time reading Daphne du Maurier, and I ended up reading 2. She also gave me 15 Dogs, and I think this is Canadian, and it is about, I think, a vet or an animal hospital. And we're following 15 dogs who are staying overnight. I think the dogs talk. It's going to be a lot of like magical realism, I guess. And then there's Life Before Man, another signed copy that Barry got for me. This is by Margaret Atwood. And he found this signed copy and picked that up for me. The Book Thief. I had asked for this beautiful 10th anniversary edition of The Book Thief, which is one of my favorite books of all time. If you need a book where you are going to cry a little bit and just feel all of the feels, this is such a good one. It takes place in Germany during World War II, and we're following a little girl named Liesel who goes to stay with these people who kind of take her in, and it's heartwarming and heartbreaking, and I loved it. He also got me The Heart's Invisible Furies, which I read with Katie from Girl About Library. We both absolutely loved it. Cyril is another character that will pull at your heartstrings, and he'll nestle his way into your heart and find a place there, because I was so protective of him throughout the whole story. And then he also got me The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. I had been wanting to read this for ages. This is 10 years before the Golden Compass trilogy, and we're following Lyra as baby and a little boy who will do absolutely anything to protect her. Okay, and then I went shopping, like I do. And so this next haul is a scary book haul. So like thrillers, horror. So the first one is The River at Night. And I think this is about a group of women who are going on is it a whitewater rafting adventure or something along those lines? And it all goes to crap. Like, I think there's someone out there stalking them or something, and it turns really sinister really quickly. There's also The Wildling Sisters by Eve Chase. I'm trying to remember what this is about. It's about sisters, obviously. I wish I could remember what that's about. I'm drawing a complete blank, but it is one of those like gothic thrillery books. It's more gothic than thriller, I believe. I had also picked up The Fever, which is about a group of girls in high school who suddenly get very, very ill, and it's all of them getting ill, and are they faking it or what's exactly going on, and you need to try to find out. I also picked up Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I think I had already had a copy of this, but I found a prettier copy, and so I caved. Covers and the way that a book looks really does matter to me, so I'm happy to buy a book twice if I can find a better version of it. It's like the Book Thief. I kind of wanted to do the same thing there. So yes, I read Rebecca, absolutely adored Rebecca. It's so unsettling about a woman who meets a man very randomly on vacation, I guess, and he asked her to marry him, and they move back to Manderley, and there she kind of encounters his late wife who recently passed away because everyone is obsessed with her, and her name is Rebecca. I also picked up 2 horror books that are sequels. So one is Ring, and then the other is Spiral. So this is 1 and 2 in a series, and I've always wanted to read this. I actually didn't know about it. I'd watched the movie Ring and then discovered that it was a book, and I was like, well, the book is always better than the movie, right? And this is, I think, translated from Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. So those are 2 really fun ones as well. And then I've got a big ol' historical fiction book haul. So the first one from that haul is The Room on Rue Amélie. I'm very sorry to say that I still have not read this. I received this from Simon & Schuster, and I feel super guilty that I haven't read it still. But this is World War II, and we're following 3 different vantage points, I believe in France. And it's like 3 different people whose lives come together because of World War II. So it did look really, really good. I also found a copy of Victoria, which is apparently a fictionalized version of Queen Victoria, and is apparently the inspiration for the PBS miniseries. It does sound really good, and I think the author actually worked on the Victoria miniseries as well. I also picked up The Shoemaker's Wife after many people suggested it. Many of you guys mentioned The Shoemaker's Wife, which takes place in Italy. I don't really know much more about it than that, but I saw it at a Value Village, and I remember like grabbing it and going, okay, I've heard about this too many times to just pass it by. I also picked up All the Stars in Heaven, I think by the same author as The Shoemaker's Wife, and this one takes place in old Hollywood, and ever since I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I've been drawn to that kind of storyline. So yeah, we're following these movie stars in old Hollywood. I also got The Woman in the Castle, or The Women in the Castle, and this is about a group of widows their husbands were part of the resistance to the Nazi Party, and I believe all of their husbands died, and the women are coming together, I think soon after they've discovered their husbands have died, and they're grouping together. I don't know if they're going to try and exact revenge or what the plan is, but I'm assuming a lot of grief will be going on in this book. Now, this next one I donated. Annexed, I picked up, and I remember thinking, interesting storyline. It is about the little boy who is in love with Anne Frank and his story. But it's YA, and the more I read YA, the more I realize it's just not for me. And so I just decided not a good idea. So I've donated that one. I also bought and donated The 12 Tribes of Hattie. This is very much about motherhood, and last year at this time I had just had a miscarriage, and I just did not want to have a book about motherhood on my shelves. It just brought me some grief. I know that it's meant to be a good book. This was just for myself, and maybe I'll read it in future years or something, but not right now. So I donated that one. I'd also picked up Memoirs of a Geisha, which I soon after read and adored this book. Oh my gosh, this follows a little girl in Japan who is sold by her family to become a geisha. So she goes and lives in a house where that is her plan. That is what is going to go on in her life. She's meant to become a geisha, and you follow her on that journey, and I adored that book. It'll make you feel all the feels. It's very much about resilience and standing on your own 2 feet, and oh, so good. I also picked up Longbourn, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. You guys know I struggle with retellings of classic novels, but I read this one and really liked it. It's from the perspective of the servants who live at Longbourn. So yes, you do run into Mr. and Mrs. Bennet in here, but it really is about the servants more. So I really liked that. I also grabbed The Secret Life of Bees. Now, I think this is one of my mom's favorite books, or at least it was for a very long time. And I still haven't read this book, and I really want to, because this is one of her most beloved books, one of her best known books. I read The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd in this last year, and I really enjoyed it. And I've heard this is like 10 times better than that. So yes, I have not read The Secret Life of Bees. Another book I haven't read, The Piano Teacher. I now cannot remember what in the world this is about. I think this is about someone moving to Asia and becoming a piano teacher there, but it could be completely wrong. It could be steering you down the wrong path. I have no idea. Another one I don't really remember anything about is The Lady and the Unicorn. I know that one is about tapestry and called The Lady and the Unicorn, and it's the story behind that tapestry, but I know nothing more than that. I also picked up 5 Quarters of the Orange by Joanne Harris. Joanne Harris? Yeah. And I had been wanting to pick this up for a very long time. I found it at a Value Village and snagged it right away. I still haven't read any Joanne Harris. She wrote Chocolat and 5 Quarters of the Orange. She's written quite an extensive amount of books, so I should really pick her up at some point. Peace Like a River, I obviously had to get this because Katie from Life Between Words, this is one of her favorite books of all time, and I knew that if I saw it, I would have to pick it up. And I think this is about a family who's sticking by their son who's being accused of murder? Now, The 10th Gift I donated. I just didn't see any real connection between me and the book. I didn't know why I bought it. Do you ever do that where you're like, you just buy something because you think maybe, and then realize even as you're walking out that you probably shouldn't have done that. That was the 10th gift for me. Another historical fiction book haul. I was on a historical fiction, like, I don't know, bandwagon or something, but not that I'm complaining. I love historical fiction. So I also picked up The Amazing Adventure of Cavalier and Clay after hearing Russell from Ink and Paper blog just rave about this. This won the Pulitzer Prize, about two cousins in New York. It is World War II. One of the cousins like escaped, I think escaped from Prague or something. He is a Jew, and he was able to escape the Nazis, and they start up a comic book together. Dreams of Joy is a sequel to one of Lisa C's books, so I don't know anything about it because I kind of refuse to look at the back. I don't want it to ruin the first one, so, but it's a sequel to one of Lisa C's books. Orphan Train, I had already read. This book got me out of the biggest reading slump ever. It was a horrible reading slump. And I picked up this book and boom, I got right out of it. This is a true story about a time in which in America, orphans would be rounded up together and put on a train, and they would stop from one town to the next. They'd all get off, and then people from that town would be like, I need you. And so essentially, most of the time, these kids were chosen to help out around the house. Girls were asked to, cook and clean. Boys were working out in the farms. And we're following a little girl and a little boy who are on the orphan train. And I loved that book. Oh my gosh. Now, the next two are a pair. So there's Storms of War and The Edge of the Fall. Both of these books take place, I think, in World War I. At least the Storms of War takes place in World War I. And maybe The Edge of the Fall is like the aftermath of it. I haven't really read the back of The Edge of the Fall because, again, I don't want it to ruin the Storms of War for me. But I am just so happy to have World War I fiction on my shelves. There's so much World War II, and I love World War II fiction. But, I mean, a hot second before World War II, there was this enormous war that I feel gets not overshadowed, but it's not as recognized and remembered as World War II. So we follow a family who are very well off, and one of their sons, I think, goes to war. I also picked up Slammerkin by Emma Donoghue. This gives me Crimson and the Petal vibes, even though I haven't read that book. I think if I was to choose between the two, I would read the Crimson Petal and the White, but it's about a prostitute in London and her experience. I think it's of Victorian time, so like, 19th century. The Other Typist is another book that you guys have recommended to me over and over again, and it's about a girl, I think in the 20s or 30s, and she is a typist, that's her job, and she meets another person, another typist who like introduces her to the jazz scene and like really infiltrates her into society because she's very much someone who doesn't go out a lot, and suddenly her world is turned upside down by this other typist. And then the last one is Afterlife, and I think this is about a little boy or a little girl whose family are like tarot card readers, they're palm readers, they are spiritualists, and that is their job, and they kind of prey upon weak people who buy into it at that time. There was a huge time in history where that was like very, very popular. So that is the story of the Afterlife. And those are all of the books that I bought in January, which is a ton. But I do have two books that have kind of jumped out at me more than others. One of them is The Other Typist by Suzanne Rindell, just because you guys have told me to read it so many times, and I haven't read anything that took place in that time period for a while. So yeah, 1920s Manhattan. It does sound really, really good. I also love this cover. But the one I think I'm going to pick up, because it was on my 19 books I want to read for 2019, I'm starting it off right, and that is Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. It's a chunker. It's, oh my god. Yeah, it's 622 pages. I'm scared. It's also tiny, tiny font. Oh god, I'm nervous. But it's supposed to be amazing. Maybe I'll listen to this on audiobook. Maybe that's what I should do. Have any of you listened to this on audiobook, and is it any good and worthwhile? But I think I've got to take the plunge and read Cavalier and Clay finally. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you wanted me to pick another book. What book did you want me to pick? Are you super upset that I picked Cavalier and Clay? Have you read Cavalier and Clay, and what did you think of it if you have? Hopefully it's all good news, because it's a big book. Anywho, I hope that you guys are doing well. Let me know in the comments below what you are planning on reading this January. And we'll talk soon. Okay, bye guys.